welcome to Awkward Double Bills, a podcast in which a cinephile and a genre fan try to broaden each other's cinematic horizons one film at a time. Each episode, we'll be discussing two films, one chosen by me, Matt Schaefer,
and one chosen by me, Rob Takizawa Lowe. In this episode, we'll be discussing Joel Anderson's Lake Mungo from 2008 and Noah Baumbach's The Squid and the Whale from 2005. We'll talk about what the films are trying to do, what we think of them, and try to see them through each other's eyes. These discussions will be filled with spoilers, so please keep that in mind before listening.
At the end of the episode, we'll try and figure out how the two movies could possibly work together as an awkward double bill.
Okay, before we get to today's discussions, Matt, what have you been watching recently?
I'm afraid I've got nothing for you this time. Just more World Cup, more football. I was racking my brains to think of anything I've watched besides World Cup-related YouTube videos, podcasts, etc.
So football or media about football?
Basically, yeah. It'll wear off soon, or it'll end soon, or maybe a couple weeks. So not that soon, but yeah, I mean that, and I'm in the busy part of the semester, so I'm also busy with work. So yes, not much time, and any spare time has been filled with football.
Are there any for any football interested, football curious listeners? Are there any particular football YouTubers you'd recommend listening to? Any ball tubers?
Well, a ball is very much not a tube, so that would be challenging.
That's true.
The one that I've kind of focused on for this World Cup it's a very popular one. I think it's in the States. It's a English guy, but he's been based in the States for a while, and it's called Men in Blazers, and they release probably 3 or 4 different YouTube videos a day during the World Cup.
Okay.
And also release those as podcast episodes. The other podcast I started listening to, I was kind of aware of him before, and not really sure, but he's kind of listenable and occasionally funny, which is, do you know who Adam Friedland is?
Oh, yeah.
So he's a big football fan.
Okay.
And so he's been, during the World Cup, he's been devoting like every other episode, I think, or maybe all the episodes to talking about the World Cup.
All right, nice. I won't be checking them out myself, being not a football fan, but
Sure.
But yeah, maybe someone out in the audience, our vast audience, will check one of those out.
Uh-huh. How about you? What have you been watching?
Well, I've squeezed in a few films as usual. I watched a film called The Telephone Box, or La Cabina, from 1972. Have you ever heard of this?
No, it's not. It's not the original or remake of the Colin Farrell movie.
No,
that's Phone Box or something like that.
Phone Box or Phone Booth. Yeah. No, this is. It was a made-for-TV movie. It's 35 minutes long, and it's about a man who gets in. He goes to use a telephone box. And then he gets stuck inside, and then it just goes insane from there. And it's like it becomes like absolutely terrifying as it moves along. It's a really, really strange film. Apparently, it won an award for like the best TV movie of the year or something. I mentioned it on Blue Sky, and lots of people replied saying, "Oh my god, I remember that. I saw that as a kid. It disturbed me forever." So yeah. And I watched a film called Meat Kills, which is a home invasion film from 2025 about a group of environmental activists who break into a family farm, and they sort of these environmental activists face off against the family on the farm. And yeah, I didn't like it. I think the filmmakers kind of tried to make it balanced by having like some sympathetic characters and some non-sympathetic characters on both sides. And the message, I guess, was kind of like, the extremists on either side sort of ruin things for the moderates on either side. But yeah, I think even with that attempt at balance, you could kind of see where the sympathies lay more in the film. And as a sort of animal rights guy, I didn't really like it very much. But that's my bias, obviously.
In general, are you a fan of the home invasion genre?
Yeah, I like home invasions. I mean, not real ones, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not a fan?
No, that's one of the probably many horror subgenres that I distinctly do not like.
Okay. I'll add a few to the list. Are there any particular ones that you've seen?
Are trying to avoid? Well, I guess Funny Games is the one that I've seen. I think the remake. Yeah, I don't know. What are some other classics of the genre?
Well, I mean, Funny Games is a particularly bleak and unpleasant one, I'll have to have a think. So there are loads of home invasion films. Like The Strangers is is one. That's one that was quite popular. I'm not a huge fan of The Strangers, actually, but yeah, as a subgenre, what is kind of scary about it is the fact that it's your safe space being invaded and there's nowhere to go. So I think it's a very, very effective subgenre of horror because it's one of the only ones that's that you feel, oh, this could happen to me.
Yeah, and hence why I dislike it so much.
Yeah. I mean, any horror could happen to you. Nothing's impossible.
True, that's true. So I'll keep that in mind as I try to go to sleep tonight.
Yeah, I'll think of a couple that you might like that are maybe a bit less unpleasant, and add them to the list. And another film that I watched yesterday, I watched it on the late night train coming back from the talk I attended, and it was called Late Night Trains, or Last Stop on the Night Train. And as you can kind of guess from the title, it's basically an Italian remake of The Last House on the Left, which is an American remake of The Virgin Spring. But yeah, these two girls get on a train, they get assaulted and killed by hoodlums, and the hoodlums end up in their aunt and uncle's house, and then there is some revenge which ensues, and that was it. And I thought it was it was well made. It was a better made film than The Last House on the Left. Have you seen The Last House on the Left? No, it's not a well-made film. It's very amateurish. It's a Wes Craven film. I think it's his first film. It's very amateurish, but it's sort of powerful because it's very amateurish. Whereas when you take that same story, it's a very grimy, nasty story about sort of base human activities and like the desire for revenge and that kind of thing. When you take that and then turn it into a very slick production, it sort of sanitizes it for me. So even though this was a better made film, I felt it was less effective. So yeah, that's what I've been watching. A lot of fun, cheerful things.
I feel like something bad is going to happen to me.
2008's Lake Mungo focuses on a grieving family who, following the drowning of their daughter Alice, tried to piece together the events leading up to her death. Presented in mockumentary format, the film explores the feelings of grief and loss of the family, and gradually begins to introduce the possibility that the ghost of Alice has returned. The realistic performances, slow burn story, and purposefully ambiguous treatment of the supernatural have made the film something of a cult classic. Although it was filmed on a low budget with unknown actors, it's now considered one of the most effective found footage movies of all time. Let's turn to our discussion of Lake Mungo.
The image was quite unsettling because it's
okay, so as usual, let's start by having you explain why you chose this film for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, you chose your film first, which was The Squid and the Whale, which we'll get to later. And I thought, let's have another water-related film.
Okay.
So I picked Lake Mungo sort of out of a hat, But also, I remember on a previous episode, you said that you had not seen a lot of found footage films, but that you had enjoyed the Blair Witch Project. And I thought that this was a really good example of a different kind of found footage film. It's a mockumentary with sort of more found footage elements. It's not pure found footage like the Blair Witch Project. And I think it's almost as effective as that film. That's my experience with it. So I chose it because I thought it would be interesting for you to see another example of found footage which is considered very effective. And I chose it from my point of view because I wanted to watch it again, and I enjoyed watching it again. And also I was really curious to see how you would respond to it. So it's sort of a provocative choice. So what was your first kind of reaction to seeing this film?
So overall, I liked it. I thought it was a well-made film, well written, acted, directed. I guess it's a different type of direction when you're sort of putting together this mockumentary style. And as you said, there's found footage, but there's also police footage and home video. So it's sort of multimodal assembly of different images and video. But all that I thought was done very well. Yeah, I don't know if I would consider it a horror exactly. I wasn't quite sure exactly what the genre would be. I guess there are elements of horror. I read a review, or I read the Wikipedia page basically, where somebody said it had one of the best jump scares of the year. And I was trying to remember a jump scare. I don't remember any jump scares in it. Although I did write in my notes jump scare coming, because there were a few moments where I thought there might be a jump scare coming. I think it was when Ray the psychic was doing his consultation with the mother, with June.
Oh, right.
There were a few things. I mean, as I said, overall, I thought it was very well written. There were a few things that I guess this is a slightly older film. It's not very old, but 2008. But maybe I've seen things since then. And so I don't want to be too critical of it if it was kind of doing things before they became much more kind of standard tropes. But I guess it does introduce some of the horror tropes. So the psychic expert, that's kind of a horror trope, I guess, going back to Poltergeist or probably even earlier.
Yeah, it shows up in the Sinister movies and that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah. When it turns out that the son, Matthew, faked it all, it was such an obvious kind of red herring.
Yeah.
That, I don't know if we're meant to believe it for that long. Even early on, when they sort of establish this very kind of realistic style and they're playing it as nonfiction. As soon, I think somebody says, but then stuff started happening around the house. That kind of, it broke the realism a bit. I thought, okay, we're in this kind of territory. And after it turns out Matthew faked everything, suddenly she just starts showing up again in the tapes and videos. They just say, okay, no, we'll do that again anyway. We'll say it was really happening. So just a few little things like that in terms of the writing. But I mean, those are sort of minor quibbles. Like overall, I thought it was very interesting. As I think the girl who dies at the beginning of the film, Alice is 16. She's a 16-year-old girl. I have a 15-year-old daughter. So, it felt in some ways, I don't know, relatable. That's the right word. But obviously the fear of having a child, of losing a child, maybe it's an easy way to sort of engage the audience. But then, what it did with it, I thought was interesting. Yeah, the sort of the ending I thought was very interesting. The eventual focus, which to me felt like the main focus of the film, on this mother-daughter relationship, and the fact that it wasn't the kind of relationship that maybe either of them wanted, and kind of slowly revealing more about Alice, I thought was done very well. Yeah, so overall I liked it. And in addition to all that, I think there's also a lot to talk about in terms of the movie.
Okay. Well, I'm curious about the your reaction to the performances, because as I said in the introduction, these were all unknown actors chosen because they were unknown. And I thought they were very, very convincing, like better than people I've seen in this kind of, production at a much more expensive level. What did you think about the performances?
I agree. I wrote down early on that the acting I thought was very good. And as you said, I think it's a challenge because it has to be very natural, because it's meant to be nonfiction. And so we are meant to think we're watching a documentary crew interview these people or see them appear on police footage or on news reports. And yeah, I mean, there were moments where I was not worried, but I was thinking, oh, are they going to be able to pull it off? Because then, they also have to tell a story and they have to say certain lines. But they never, it never kind of slipped into that thing. I think what you're talking about is, sometimes you see films where they're meant to be on a news report, or they're meant to be being interviewed by a documentary filmmaker, but you can see them acting, and it's not that real. Yeah.
There was a film that came out a year or two ago called Strange Harvest, which was similar to this. It was like recounting a sort of a case in a sort of mockumentary format, and it was exactly that. I mean, I thought it was a great film, really, really good. But whenever the people were being interviewed, they were obviously, like you say, they were obviously acting, and it just took you out of the film. And here, you didn't get that so much. I think that the performances were, on the whole, very, very good. A couple of slips here and there, but much better than you'd expect for people who hadn't been in films before.
So, I mean, I mentioned a little bit about what I kind of saw as some of the themes in the movie. How did you sort of interpret the film, or what it was trying to tell us, or what it was trying to ask us, even?
Well, I mean, I've said before, I kind of get sick of horror films being about grief, right? And I think that this film is about, a family dealing with grief, and with the fact that the sort of the ghost of the daughter keeps coming back in all of these different ways, and they're trying to kind of get closure on the fact that the daughter has gone, and her recurring in the story is almost like the memory or the force of her recurring in their lives, I feel. So I think that's kind of the main theme. It's about grief. It's obviously about relationships between the family members. But yeah, that was what I saw as being the main theme. Did you think of something different?
That's interesting. Yeah, like as I said, I think grief is definitely there, but actually, for me, that grief wasn't the main theme. For me,
Okay.
the main theme was about. It was basically, I guess, Alice is the main character, even though we don't see much of her. But she's the main character in terms of it's kind of a, I don't know, profile or character study of a girl who obviously, as they say directly, she was very troubled. But also, I guess there's, generational trauma, which is maybe also a common theme in horror films. But certainly, we see the mother, June, talking about how she felt bad that she couldn't connect to Alice more. And then we also see June's mother talking about, I couldn't connect to her very much. And then as a result, I felt that, she found it hard to connect to Alice. So I think it was, obviously a horror film, that this kind of thing doesn't happen that often, luckily. And then certainly the ghost of the child who dies coming back and appearing in photos happens less often, I assume.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
who knows?
Yeah, we don't know. But in terms of what it's saying about actual families, they both seem like good parents, perhaps. We can talk about that more later on, maybe. But certainly the mother seemed like not a perfect parent, because nobody is, but she seemed like a decent person, but for whatever reason couldn't connect to her daughter well enough. And it's hard to know if that was the cause of. I don't think the film is saying that's the cause of all of Alice's problems and the way she would act out by. There's the whole thing of her having sex with a neighbor and all that stuff. So she's obviously acting out in certain ways, but probably because she feels something missing, or she feels frustrated, or she doesn't know who she is yet. So as a portrait of a young girl just kind of struggling with whatever mental health issues she's struggling with, I thought it was interesting. And for me, that was kind of the more central theme.
So for you, it was more about kind of understanding the girl by hearing, what her family say and following, the sort of uncovering of the sort of trail of evidence, that kind of thing. Whereas I saw it more as a focus on the family trying to deal with the loss, the absence of the girl. Yeah. I guess it works both ways, which is good. There's a couple of ways to read it. Did you think it was a supernatural film?
Yes. I think the ghost of Alice was, in terms of within the world of the film. Yes,
of course. Yeah.
Yes. I think Alice did see her future dead self at Lake Mungo. And I think she did come back. So I guess that's maybe the interesting part is when she was alive, she felt like she wasn't able to communicate who she really was to her family. But by coming back, the reason she was coming back as a ghost was so that her family could know her better in both good and bad ways. Yeah. So I think it was supernatural.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think that people seem to think that it's not supernatural. The director said it's not a supernatural film, but then how do you explain the footage of the dead body that she meets?
Yes, right.
Yeah. And then at the end, the photographs where she's revealed to have been in the photographs, the whole time. You saw that bit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Since 2005, I stayed through the credits.
It's a good instinct. In terms of the construction of the film, like you said, you were a bit worried about whether they'd be able to pull it off. I think it's remarkably successful for a first-time director, and in fact, an only-time director. Like, it's the only film the guy's ever made, written or directed. I think it's remarkably sort of well constructed. Like the kind of the flow of the story, like you say, is a little bit we're going in one direction. Oh no, we're not going in that direction. Oh no, we are going that direction. But I kind of think that works. I was wondering what you think the they're trying to say about the son who fakes the footage, the ghost footage. What is the point of that? Because I don't think it is just about misdirection, because they kind of try and explain it. What do you think they're trying to do with that?
Well, I think from your reading of the film in terms of the focus on the family and the grieving process, I think he's doing it maybe for himself, but maybe especially for his parents. It's misguided. It's not doing it the right way, but maybe just seeing his parents go through this and just wanting to give them something that they can sort of hold on to. I think maybe he sort of even explicitly says, because the mother never didn't see the body, and so always had these doubts about whether Alice had really died, and they dig up the body and everything. And so this was just his way of kind of trying to give his parents maybe some more closure, I guess, ironically, but sort of going about it the wrong way.
Yeah, I didn't read it that way.
Okay.
Because they kind of give two different explanations, right? One is the one that you've just given, and the other one is where someone says, I don't think he knows why he did it. And to me, that was just, when people are grieving, they do sort of irrational things that don't seem to make sense. Like, you can't really attribute motivation to it. It's like what you get with a lot of conspiracy theories when there's been a disaster or something. People go, "Oh, why did they react in that way? Why were they laughing when they were talking about their dead family members?" Like, because grief makes you irrational to some extent. And I thought it was sort of exploring that. It's maybe in his mind he was kind of doing it to help his parents, but it's not a rational response to what's happened. It's not a rational way of dealing with it. So I read it as that. I read it as being part of that exploration of the effects of grief on people.
Yeah, I like that. I would also say maybe, at some point I was thinking in terms of, like I said, for me the focus was on Alice and this troubled girl. Yeah. But I think there was maybe also an element of, I don't know if coming of age is the right term, but there was also an element of Matthew, like he lives, he survives, and he has to go on. And it was also like an element of him finding his way afterwards. And even the part of him, joining Ray the psychic to go off on, little field trips and develop his photography. Yeah. It felt like part of what we were getting was Matthew's, growing up and maturing, that kind of thing. Having said that, and I wonder, I'm sure other people have had this thought or this idea about the film. I have one quick question. There's early on, there's they photograph and they notice that Matthew has all the bruises on his body. Did they ever explain that?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think they do.
Maybe it's like the limo driver in The Big Sleep or whatever. They don't know.
Yeah. So one idea I had, it's not my idea. It's not an idea that I think is there, but it's something that I thought maybe I wouldn't be surprised if somebody's written a long Reddit post about, which is, and I'm sure you can go and find all kinds of clues, which is there might be a case, you could probably put a case together that Matthew killed Alice. So there's a few scenes like home footage of them, like messing around, playing around, and even like him going into her room when she doesn't want him in her room, and it's just very subtly could be coded as a little bit creepy on Matthew's part.
Yeah,
and they're out in the lake together swimming, and what he reports is he left her in the middle of the lake, and he comes back to shore, and then doesn't see her again. Right. She drowns. Yeah. And so so again, it's not the reading that I would want to have of the film, but I think you could make a case. She's coming back as a ghost, maybe to kind of expose Matthew as her killer. Maybe she's as a ghost, she's able to, bruise him to try to damage him. And he's, part of the faking it is maybe he's trying to somehow cover up or misdirect from his crime.
Yeah.
What do you think of this?
I love that. I love it. I think that's a great explanation. I think, well, that kind of makes sense of the faking, right? Because if you do something bad, your first instinct is to try and sort of misdirect people away from it in a way that makes you seem more guilty.
Yeah, right, exactly. And he is, I mean, I think, and it's a great performance because I think he comes across as a little odd and a little moody, and it could just be he's a very sensitive kid, or it could be he's a killer. The scene I found the scene at the end like really heartbreaking when the family is driving away from the home, and it's indicated that Alice is in the house. And I mean, the way I read it was that she was trying to get one last time to connect with her mother.
Right.
And the mother's walking around the empty house looking at it as they've packed up. And Alice, in whatever way she can become a ghost, she's trying to just, she's hoping. And then as the car is driving away, I thought one thing it made me think of is just how great cinema is. Like this is the kind of thing you can only do in cinema, right? Watching a car slowly drive away and go around the bend. And the further it goes, the more your heart drops. But the Killer Matthew reading would be like maybe that was her last chance to tell everyone who actually killed her as well.
Yeah, so we've got 3 readings of the film.
Yes.
In terms of the mother-daughter relationship, so there's the whole thing where like they're kind of doing the 2 separate sessions with the psychic, right? And they're both they're almost seeing each other at different time periods. But then not, I think it's the mum who sort of walks away and says, "Oh, I can't see her. Yes. But did that play into your reading into your understanding of the film?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. In terms of a lot of it being about this misconnection between mother and daughter. And I thought, I mean, I would have been fine with I guess what would have been the choice to make it a happier ending, to have them connect at that moment, across death and across time, where they do have that kind of connection. But I also respect not kind of giving that I guess maybe the easier ending. Have you seen, I think it came out last year, have you seen the Steven Soderbergh film Presence?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So this reminded me a lot of that, actually.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that there's some connective tissue there.
Yeah. And so if you remember in Presence, the scene at the end where, just very quickly for anyone who hasn't watched it, it's about a child who dies. It's kind of similar, and the family's grieving. But Presence, it's more of a kind of traditional Hollywood. Well, I guess the main point is that it's first person from the ghost's perspective. But it also has a whole thing where like the brother's best friend turned out to be the killer. There's a kind of big climatic scene. But the really big climatic scene is when the mother goes down into the living room and looks in the mirror. And even before it happens, it's coming, that when she looks in the mirror, she'll see her dead child and kind of break down. And so I thought this film was maybe moving towards giving us one of those moments. But again, I respect that it didn't, that it kind of resisted that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the film is going for as much ambiguity as it can get away with. I think it wants you to leave with a lot of questions.
Yeah.
It's not really, I mean, like a lot of the whole kind of story, like why did she encounter her, future dead self? It's not explained. There's no reason for it, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the film is like that. Like, why are people doing things like, why are events happening in this way? We don't really know a lot of the time exactly what's happening, and I think that's all intentional. And I think the director even said, like, the reason he didn't make any other films was because he kind of liked the idea of it increased the sense that this was a real mystery that had happened. We've talked quite a lot about the the characters. What about the character of the dad? Because he's in it a lot. He's like a big player, and I liked him a lot in the film, but I wasn't sure what he contributed to the story apart from kind of the momentum of the plot. He's often the person kind of I went and identified the body. He's kind of almost narrating the story more than anyone else.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not really sure exactly. I mean, he's kind of the one holding everything together, I guess. We don't learn too much about his relationship with Alice. But, I mean, so here's another theory.
Okay. I like how you're getting into, you're like the Lake Mungo conspiracy podcast.
Well, so I guess another important thing to say is the scene where they notice the neighbor, Toohey, in the photo. They say, oh, there's a man in the photo. And then the mother says, oh, no, I recognize him as our neighbor. That moment, it reminded me of something, which is in the original Twin Peaks TV show. Have you ever watched Twin Peaks?
I have not, I'm afraid.
Okay. So there's I think it might even be the first episode. There's a famous moment in Twin Peaks where I think it's in a mirror. There's a creepy looking man with long, scraggly hair. And apparently he was just like the key grip who accidentally got caught in the shot.
Right.
And after the shot ended, the cameraman said, "Sorry, we have to go again." Whoever Dan was in the shot. And David Lynch looked at it and he said, No, I like that. I'm going to keep it in. And then he got this crew member to basically end up playing the chief villain of the entire Twin Peaks universe. This character called Bob. And when I saw the neighbor in the photo, my first thought was Bob, because he's kind of crouching down, but he's looking directly at the camera. And so I had Twin Peaks in my mind. And then it was only, I don't know why it took me so long to make the connection. I think it was only when I was watching the end credits, I noticed that the family name, I'd seen it earlier, but I hadn't really thought about it. I noticed that the family name, they're the Palmers, and her name is Alice Palmer. And the central mystery of Twin Peaks is who killed Laura Palmer.
Okay.
And I thought it couldn't be a coincidence. So I think this must be very intentional, because Laura Palmer was a very troubled girl who had many different, she showed many different sides of herself to different members of her community. She was she was a very nice daughter, but she would also, worked at a brothel, and she was seeing a therapist, but sleeping with him. And so very, very similar to Alice in this film, but also is murdered, but kind of sees her death coming. So the prequel film, Fire Walk with Me, she tells, I think, maybe one or two characters, like, I know death is coming for me.
So this, you think this was intentionally kind of an homage to Twin Peaks?
Yes, very much so. I mean, it might be just that he wrote the film and then he kind of saw these connections, so he thought, I'll name her Palmer, just to kind of as an homage. I don't think he was thinking, I'm going to remake Australian Twin Peaks, but I think there's undoubtedly a connection there. In Twin Peaks, big spoiler. It is a big spoiler. Big spoiler. Laura Palmer was killed by her father.
Okay,
as it turns out. Who is
have you got a conspiracy that the dad did it in Lake Mungo as well? Is that your
I mean, yeah, why not? There's less evidence than Matthew, but I'm sure if you watched it carefully, you might be able to find enough clues. So that's what I think of the father. I think he's another killer. I think the whole Palmer family.
Him and the son. Do you think it's like a Murder on the Orient Express, where they all drowned her at the same time?
Yes, the mother too. They're all guilty.
Yeah. They're all covering up for each other.
Yeah,
that's my favorite theory so far.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I thought it was a very, very clever, well-made film. I think anything that allows for multiple theories or multiple readings of it, I think is doing something right.
Glad to hear. I have one more question. Did you find it scary?
No, and I don't think I ever found it scary. I think the moment I was expecting a jump cut, like I mentioned earlier, was when Ray the psychic was doing maybe his first consultation with the mother. And I thought they might give us a jump scare there. So I was ready for it, but nothing came. And then I was thinking about it after, I assumed that when whatever critic said it has the best jump scare of the year, maybe it was when we're watching her phone footage at the end and the dead version of her appears out of the dark.
I believe that's meant to be it, yeah.
Yeah. But it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't a huge jump scare. And it's so grainy and you can't exactly see what's happening, and it doesn't really kind of, go further than that. So no, I didn't find it scary because I didn't, like we were talking earlier with home invasion films, it didn't feel like anything scary that could happen to me. I mean, obviously, losing a child is scary and horrific, but that's that's a constant fear I have anyway, underneath it all. So so like I said earlier, for me, it didn't really come across so much as a horror film.
I didn't find it scary. I found it very unsettling all the way through. But then right at the end, when they show the photographs and show like, oh, actually, she was in the frame all the time. The first time I saw it, I was like, ooh, okay. It got me a little bit. But I'm a sucker for ghost photographs, so that was I was primed for that.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to say about the form of the film, in terms of it being a fake documentary, was I hadn't really thought about it before, but it's a very, very clever use of the form, whereas I guess it's an integral part of the form, which is that it can naturally just sort of cover stuff up. In a sort of more traditionally made film, we can see anything that is happening within the world of the film, but because it's presented as a documentary, we understand that there's a lot that happened around the whole event that we'll never see and never know. So in that way, it becomes very subjective, and I think that would allow for a sort of Matthew is the killer reading as well.
Yeah. I think that's true. Well, I think I think that's true for all found footage in a way, like because you are restricted to the point of view, and only when they're deciding to film, and obviously the big criticism of found footage is like, why are they filming? And you have to have a reason. And I think the documentary format solves that problem. Although there's one film called Alien Abduction, and the main character who's holding the camera is a little boy with autism, and he films so that he kind of sees the world through the camera, and it's his way of coping with the world. And apparently that is a real therapeutic tool that's used sometimes. So that's like a clever way of doing it. But yeah, I think in this case it kind of deals with that why are they filming issue. In terms of the scariness, just very quickly, you mentioned that you don't like horror films because you don't like feeling scared. And I don't think any of the horror films that we've looked at so far have scared you.
No, I don't think I don't think so. I mean, I'm trying to remember everything we've looked at. I guess maybe Halloween would be the closest. The look of, Michael Myers, and maybe not the final scene so much, but just, when, obviously it's the suspense. It's waiting for him to attack. That's scarier than when it actually happens. Yeah. So maybe so far that's been the closest.
Has it given you a new sort of understanding of what people get from watching horror films? Because it's not always about being scared,
Yeah, I mean, again, maybe because they haven't been scary so far, that I don't know if I'd necessarily consider them horror films. But certainly a film like this, I mean, I think I understand like this idea of, very heightened circumstances, and that's sort of naturally engaging. I think, when I say what I don't like about horror films is being scared is like, that actual feeling of like, feeling disturbed, seeing disturbing images, and then them staying with me afterwards and having trouble falling asleep. Like that's the stuff that I don't like.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. I think we'll probably revisit this question when we do our roundup in a couple of episodes' time. But yeah. I'm just interested in how I'm warping your perceptions.
Right. All right. Okay. Well, I thought it was a good choice, and glad I watched Lake Mungo.
If you can, try and hit it at your mother's backhand. It's pretty weak.
Noah Baumbach's 2005 film The Squid and the Whale tells the story of the Berkman family, Mom Joan and Dad Bernard, and their two sons Walt, who's 16, and Frank, who's 12. Set in Park Slope, Brooklyn in 1986, it is by all accounts a largely autobiographical story, detailing the weeks around the parents' announcement of divorce, and how the children, already struggling with coming of age in a fraught household, react to the news. While both a drama and a comedy, it is on occasion a difficult watch because of the emotional damage inflicted on the two boys by their family situation, with perhaps a glimmer of hope when Walt finally confronts the titular sea creatures. So, let's dive into our discussion of The Squid and the Whale.
When am I going to meet Sophie?
She's not gorgeous, but she's cute.
Did you like Sophie?
Okay, so why did you choose this film?
Well, last episode we took a break from middle-class people and their middle-class problems to look at maybe slightly working-class people in Hong Kong. So I thought we'd better get back to middle-class people moaning about their lives. But also, it's a film that I liked a lot the first time I saw it, and I've liked every time I've seen it since. I have a copy of the screenplay. Yes, it's a film I like. It's a film I relate to quite a lot as the child of divorce. My parents are, in many, many ways, very, very different from Joan and Bernard. I don't think they're especially Bernard, the dad, as kind of oblivious and self-centered and selfish and just horrible. But they did divorce. I was, I guess, a bit younger, even younger than the boy Frank. And so a lot of the sort of divorce stuff I definitely could relate to. And then also like I said, my father, in most ways, not like Bernard at all, but somebody who I did, and I guess, and to an extent still do, like, consider one of the smartest people I've ever met. And I definitely did a lot of what Walt did at that age, which was just kind of parroting things my father said that I thought would make me sound intelligent. And so for the sort of relatability reasons, I've always connected to it. And I also think it's very well acted and written. Yeah, and so I was looking forward to inflicting more middle class people on you.
Thanks for that.
So what did you think?
So to be honest, the first sort of 45 minutes of the film, I fucking hated it. I really hated it. And actually, I think I hated it all the way up until the very last scene. And then the very last scene happened, and I think in that scene it won me over. And I think I need to rewatch it to experience it with that kind of understanding so that I can sort of unhate it. Yeah, I really, really took against it. I knew what it was doing, you know, but I found the characters so, like, almost all the characters so unpleasant and so unsympathetic. And like the dad, particularly the Jeff Bridges character, he was just on the nose unsympathetic. Like he wasn't even a real character to me. So I just it was the same as I said about Hannah and her sisters, and the same as I said about The Wolf of Wall Street in, you know, off mic. Just feeling, why am I spending time with these people? You know, that was my kind of initial reaction all the way through. But like I say, at the end, the final scene, I got it. I think I got what he was going for.
Okay.
You mentioned feeling, you know, some kind of kinship with the Jesse Eisenberg, with Walt, Jesse Eisenberg's character, and I did too, because I think everyone does that, right? Like everyone idolizes parrots, as you said. They're you know, one of their parents at least. And he also has that thing where he steals a song, and I liked that the Anna Paquin's character said, "Oh, I used to do the same thing with poetry." So I was thinking, yeah, I used to do the same thing. I used to, you know, steal things and sort of pass them off as my own at that age. And I didn't have, you know, divorce as an excuse. I was just a bit of a dickhead. So yeah, I kind of related to that, but that also made me dislike it because I was kind of cringing internally at myself. But again, at the end, I understood it, because I think at the end you have the moment where Jesse Eisenberg where Walt escapes from it. And you can kind of feel him shrugging off all of that weight. And I think that's what it was. The reason that I kind of connected to that final scene was because the whole film had built up such an oppressive weight on the shoulders of the children. And finally, this was him just shrugging all that off and doing something for himself. And I was like, okay, that moment. I like that. I get that. And maybe now if I rewatch the film, it'll recontextualize it all for me. But that was kind of my experience with it on the first watch.
I do remember my first watch, and I liked the whole film, but yeah, I think it was the ending, that final scene, that kind of like pushed it, you know, really elevated it for me. And I think I went out and found the Lou Reed album that the song is from, and listened to that a lot.
And then you told people you'd written it.
It's interesting. So it is, apparently it's highly autobiographical, as I mentioned in the intro. I think Noah Baumbach was a similar age in 1986, growing up in Brooklyn, and has a younger brother, and had a father who was, you know, I think he obviously exaggerated it to some extent. Interesting enough, he said that a lot of things that happen in the film are things that happened to him directly, which I think is quite honest of him. He said the stealing of the song didn't happen to him, but a friend of his did it. And it was funny in the interview, he says a friend of his did it, but it seemed like the kind of thing I would do, so I put it in my film, which is exactly what Jesse Eisenberg says. He says it's the kind of song I would have written. So he's doing it again. Or he's doing it for the first time. But
well, I'm curious, you said you liked it all the way through, and I didn't like it all the way through. So what was it that made you like it all the way through? Because, you know, you said that with like horror and things, I think you've said in the past, you can't understand why people watch it. And for me, that's this. I can't understand why people want to watch this. Like that, I kind of got it at the end, but I'm kind of curious from your point of view. I want to understand the film from your your perspective. Why do you like this kind of thing?
I think it's. I mean, so something else I read that Noah Baumbach said is somebody asked him, like, are you worried about like an empathy problem with making such sort of flawed characters? And he said I think his response was, I think flawed characters should engender even more empathy in a way. And so again, I think maybe some with Hannah and her sisters. I think what we talked about, or I mentioned, was seeing flawed people. I don't know if it necessarily makes me feel better about myself, but it makes me feel like I can maybe be a bit more self-accepting of my own flaws, like seeing other people deal with theirs and reckon with theirs through stories. So I think that's one thing. And so maybe that's the main thing. But also just seeing, I don't know, for me, seeing very relatable characters in relatable situations. Yeah, it is a good question, like why some people would want to see things that they recognize from real life. But I think, maybe it is just we're stuck in our own thoughts and our own heads all the time, and we're constantly doubting ourselves, and we're constantly wondering, why am I thinking this, or why am I acting that way? And just to see it sort of externalized, maybe just makes you feel a little less alone in the world. I don't know.
Okay, that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of similar actually to what I think about horror. Like, a lot of people watch horror because it's a way of kind of externalizing fears. And isn't it the same kind of thing? Your insecurities, your fears, just seeing it happen to somebody else and how they deal with it. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, as I mentioned, like there are moments in this film that are, they are kind of horrific in a way. The way the parents treat their kids, and especially the father, and sometimes it's hard to watch. I mean, for me, it's also a comedy, though. I mean, I think there are funny moments in the film. And you said the father is, basically not a real person, just like how selfish and horrific he is. But I think it may not be too far off. I think there are people who are that self-absorbed and narcissistic and just oblivious to how they need to treat other people, even or especially their own kids. I found myself questioning, does he really love Joan? Do you think he really loves his wife? I think he loves his kids, although I think he has a very misguided way of, maybe he thinks he's doing the right thing. He's raising them the right way by, passing on all his ideas and thoughts about the world, and trying to encourage his son. But at the same time, he's jealous of his kids. He lies to his kids. He wants to impress his kids. He is a very petty person.
He reminded me of the competitive dad in the Fast Show.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he has almost no redeeming qualities, I would say.
Yeah, and that was what kind of took me out a little bit with his character, because I was kind of thinking, why? Like, how did he ever get into the situation to have a wife and family in the first place? Like, Laura Linney her character doesn't seem like someone who would have fallen for this. Like, did he change at some point? I kind of felt like his failure as a writer had sort of made all his insecurities well up, and he'd become this terrible person over time, with the need to sort of impress his students and impress his children because he felt that he'd failed. Like, he wasn't actually that impressive, but he wanted to be impressive. He wanted to be recognized. So I was wondering if there was a backstory to him that we didn't see, because without that backstory, I wasn't quite sure how his character made sense.
Yes. Well, she does say at one point, I think later in the film, she says that, I think it was in Columbus or whatever city they met in, she said there was nobody like your father there. Like, I think he was a much more, maybe when he was having success as a writer, he was somebody that you could get along with, and probably his intellectual musings about art and literature and stuff would impress a much younger person, and so maybe she was impressed in that way. But I think I agree. I think he was less of a jerk when he was younger and maybe more successful, and just maybe put so much value into being a successful writer that when that went away, he was just kind of trying to grab onto anything he could.
Yeah. Did you read him as being a genuine intellectual?
Yeah, I mean, whatever that means, I guess. Obviously, at some point, he wrote a book or books that people liked. And, to write a novel is hard enough. And to write a successful one that people connect to, I think you probably have to know something about the world. I mean, it's a kind of a trope, but, but it's a common thing of great novelists being absolutely horrible people. I wonder, I think Walt, I think his son will probably grow up to be more of an intellectual than he is. I think once he does, read Kafka and Dickens and all these things for himself, he seems like a much more, well, he's more emotional, I guess, in some ways, but I think he'll channel all that in the right way. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends what we mean by an intellectual.
Yeah, I just feel like in a lot of films, being an intellectual is, I've read Kafka and Dickens and Nietzsche and 4 other people.
Right.
It's just knowledge of a very limited canon, really. And I don't think, to me, that is often the mark of a pseudo. Someone who I've read the impressive books and I can talk about them. I can tell people about, I don't know, Orpheus or whatever, but that doesn't equal insight. Just knowing about a thing and being able to sort of summarize its main points is not insightful. And him as a character, he's obviously not insightful about himself or really about anyone else. He doesn't appear to be. He's not a reflective person, so he didn't strike me as he struck me more as a pseudo intellectual rather than an intellectual, and that seemed to me to mirror the way that Walt was trying to be an intellectual himself by just parroting what his dad was saying. It was almost like his dad was also just kind of parroting, a milieu of ideas that he was surrounded by, or a set of ideas that he'd imbibed at some point.
I think that's possible. I mean, again, the fact that he at one point was a semi-successful novelist, I think maybe says something about, he had some talent or some, ability to have some kind of insight. But I agree, like certainly at this point in his life, I think like you were saying, reading a few books, and I think part of it is also like the confidence and the volume in which you express your opinions. Right.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, he's so adamant that what's minor Dickens and what's the Dickens worth reading, and he's probably got those for every popular novelist. Yeah. So I think I mean, I agree. I think at this point certainly he's more of a pseudo intellectual, and like I said, I mean, what was also interesting for me, and maybe like you touched on by saying that the ending maybe kind of redeemed everything that came before in a way, is that, I mean, you said like none of the characters are likable. Would you include the 2 boys, the sons, in that?
Yes.
But do you think, I mean, they're young, so maybe it's a little, I don't know. Do you think Walt will become a more likable person?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I think at the end, I found myself sympathizing a lot with Walt. Less so with the younger son, because we don't really see his big moment,
That's when the cashew comes out of his nose.
Okay.
That's his payoff.
I think for me, it was just the immediate experience of being in the company of these characters. I'm sure Laura Linney's character as well. I forgot her name. What's her name? Joan?
Joan.
Yeah. I'm sure that she has lots of redeeming qualities and is a delight. And obviously, she's attracted the attentions of lots of other people in the story. But I don't see that in the film. So as a person watching the film, going through this experience with these characters, like I understood why the 2 boys were behaving the way that they did. But what I was experiencing was them behaving the way that they did. It's a bit like, watching the bully on the playground beating up a kid. It's like, well, I know he's got a terrible home life, but what I'm seeing is him beating up a kid. So, I kind of had sympathy for them, but I didn't enjoy spending time with them.
So I think that for me, that's maybe an important difference between seeing the bully on the play, like seeing a real bully in the playground, and something that you have to spend time, like versus watching a story of these characters. So I think the story allows for, I mean, maybe I've got it the wrong way around. Maybe my central flaw is I've been living my life the wrong way around. But like I can have much more empathy for characters in stories than for real life people, I think, maybe.
Okay.
But I think stories are designed to engender empathy with characters, right? They allow us to see things from other perspectives. Like, in a sense, there's this idea of, was it focalization in storytelling? So, even in literature, obviously, if it's a first person, a story told in the first person, the focalization is always there because you're focusing on whatever the main character is telling us he's or her, he or she is focusing on. But even in third person writing, writers have techniques to shift the focus of where we're seeing things. And then cinema has its own techniques for doing those kind of things. Mm-hmm. So, even in a scene with two characters that we've never seen before, the camera work and the editing will tell us whose perspective we're seeing this scene from. And it might switch between characters. And I think, what's interesting is when they play with that in terms of, we're kind of getting somebody's perspective on the scene, but we're not fully in their heads, right? We don't actually know what they're thinking about. We just kind of know maybe how they're viewing it. But for me in this film, the perspective in general is Walt's, even though we do see, there are scenes without Walt. Like, we see just the parents talking to each other. But even that could just, you could interpret as, Walt is not imagining, but he's like aware of all these conversations that his parents are having. And so I guess, and again, maybe just in terms of how I relate to the story, is just relating especially to the main character of Walt, and empathizing with him in terms of the suffering he's going through, and then how he kind of overcomes that in a way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, perhaps because I tend to approach films in a different way, because, I watch different genres of films, right? I'm not used really to watching genres where, the main goal is empathizing with the characters. I'm used to, characters being a kind of a vehicle for story or for affect or whatever. So yeah, but like I say, at the end, when it clicked for me, I think having seen that now, if I went back and rewatched it, I would probably have a different kind of experience of seeing the film, a different experience of empathizing with the characters. Like, I knew intellectually what the film wanted me to do. I knew intellectually all the way through, this film wants me to, empathize with these children and what they're going through. And, I don't have an experience of divorce in my family. So perhaps that's part of it as well. Like, it wasn't for me a particularly relatable thing, other than, like I say, recognizing some negative things the children were doing, that I also did without having the excuse of a broken home to justify it. But yeah, I think if I rewatched it, I would probably be able to empathize more with the characters. But yeah, I mean, because it was pairing characters that I was struggling to empathize with, particularly the parents who you're obviously not meant to empathize with, really, but also like, a format and a type of story that I don't generally enjoy. So I think that was what kind of brought on my kind of strong negative reaction. But a second viewing, I think I would probably get more out of it, probably enjoy it more.
Well, it is a brisk, I think without the credits, it's like less than 120 minutes. Or no, sorry, less than an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, I did appreciate that about it.
Well, like, yeah. Good. So that actually connects to my final question, in terms of the style of the film, the way it was shot and all that. Was there anything that kind of stood out for you, or that you noticed about it?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this. So the whole thing was filmed handheld, right? I noticed that about halfway through, I think, because it was very restrained. It wasn't like, like the Bourne Identity where the camera's, shaking around like that. It was handheld. And that seemed to me to kind of mirror the emotional state of the characters, where everything's unstable, but they're kind of holding it together just about. It's not, the camera's not wobbling all over the place, but it's not stable either. So I thought that that element of the style was fitting. I thought that it fit the circumstances of the characters. And I also I read on the Wikipedia that it was using a particular type of camera that was meant to evoke 1986, and it looked a little bit like Hannah and her sisters, actually, like the kind of the color palette and stuff like that. But weirdly, this didn't make, when I started watching it, I didn't realize that it was 1986. I only kind of got later on that it wasn't 2005.
Right.
Because everything to me seemed very 2005, because in 2005 everything was trying for that kind of indie sort of retro-ish sort of feel. And when I saw, in the credits, like produced by Wes Anderson, I was like, of course this was produced by Wes Anderson. So yeah. I thought it was interestingly made for those reasons.
Yeah. I think like you said, the handheld camera, I think it has a specific intention in terms of the reflecting what the characters are experiencing, and like you said, it, I think also adds to the power of the final scene, where the very final shot is, or we have a couple of shots where the camera is just static and locked off.
Yeah. Yes.
And there is, I mean, you might not be aware. So the Museum of Natural History, where he goes at the end and sees the squid and the whale, is in Manhattan. So I guess that's where the hospital was. And I don't know how intentional it was, but the shots, there are a few sort of Woody Allen-ish shots. I think when we talked about Hannah and Her Sisters, I mentioned like Woody Allen, like street scenes, like often having the camera on the other side of the street and then kind of finding the character. And when he first exits the hospital, there's a very Woody Allen-ish shot. The other thing I hadn't really noticed before, but noticed this time, was the editing in terms of the beginning and ending of the scenes. So it's almost like get in late and get in late and get out early. Like the scenes often, there's not much, preamble. The scene often starts with the dialogue and then ends with dialogue. We don't get any kind of extra lingering shots. There's no establishing shots or anything. It's all pretty brisk.
Yeah, and I noticed that as well. So the lack of establishing shots was very interesting to me, because there's a film by Abel Ferrara. Abel Ferrara is his first film, The Driller Killer, about a man who kills people with a drill. And I watched that with his commentary. It's not a great film, but I watched that with his commentary, where he was just drunk and like commenting on himself as like a terrible young filmmaker. And there's a bit where it just switches from one scene to another with no context. And he goes, "Whoa, how about an establishing shot?" And it occurred to me that, like in that film, it was very disorientating that there was no establishing shot and you didn't know how you were getting from one space to another. And here they weren't doing the establishing shots, but it wasn't disorientating. So I thought it was obviously quite cleverly done that I hadn't sort of noticed that until, again, sort of halfway through the film that they weren't doing that very much.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, it definitely had a sort of, maybe I don't know, 90s or maybe like 2000s kind of aesthetic in terms of the feel of it. But again, I thought it all contributed. And then like maybe the closest we get to establishing shots are, again, in the final scene. They're not quite that, but we sort of have kind of bigger shots. And we and like much more dramatic music with the strings than we've had throughout most of the rest of the film. Okay, well, not a resounding success in convincing you that middle class people's problems matter, but I might keep trying.
Yeah. I mean, well, this is what the podcast is about, right? I enjoyed being exposed to the film. It's like making me take my medicine. I don't like it, but it's good for me. And like I said, I think by the end, the film won me over. And I think I do need to rewatch it to reframe all that went before.
Now it's time to head into the double feature challenge, where we try to identify the points that would make the movies complement each other as an awkward double bill. Okay, I have maybe one big thing, but just as a starting point. But do you have anything that ties these films together?
Well, maybe I have the same big thing. They're both about families trying to deal with some kind of trauma.
Yeah, I think mine I thought of that too, and it's definitely related to that. Again, maybe I'm focusing maybe more on the specific characters. I guess Alice and Walt. I wonder. Maybe this is what makes it kind of challenging, is that maybe it's not possible to kind of pair them up exactly like that. Maybe there's elements of Alice and Matthew from Lake Mungo in both Walt and Frank. But yeah, these kids, and obviously it's connected with their family trauma. So maybe it is your point. But yeah, these kids trying to find themselves under very difficult family circumstances. In the case of Alice, it's interesting because it wasn't like a horrible relationship she had with her mother. It's just like a lack of connection in some way.
Yeah.
And for the Berkmans in The Squid and the Whale, I mean, it seems very much the father's fault. But the kid's still trying to kind of struggle and find their way.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think maybe another kind of connection is specifically Matthew and Walt both deal with the trauma that's happened to them by behaving in irrational ways. Like, Walt, steals the song and performs it. It's a very strange thing to do, and a thing where you'd obviously be caught out. It's faking. It's trying to trick people. And Matthew kind of does the same thing, where he fakes the videos of his sister's ghost coming back. They're both irrational responses to a trauma, I think.
Yeah, very much so. We didn't talk about it so much when we were talking about the film on its own, but I think like a key feature of both Frank and Walt in The Squid and the Whale is that they're desperately trying to grow up. I think we notice it more with Frank because he's even younger, but drinking the alcohol and like all the stuff he does, it just seems like he's desperate to. It feels like if he can be an adult, he can escape this horrible situation. And even Walt is, I noticed in the final scene, like he's always wearing basically the same blue button-down shirt, but it's clearly too big for him.
Right.
He's wearing. I mean, it's not like he's a small person, but he's wearing clothes that are too big for him. He's trying to fit into being an adult. Yeah, I guess in a way Matthew is as well. He's trying to find. He discovers photography as this kind of passion of his. Despite his sister dying, he still has to live. He still has to go on and find his way in the world.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be quite a few, fairly clear parallels, sort of thematically, and even like specifically between the characters. They're obviously very different films. In terms of the nature of the story, was there anything that you saw there?
I mean, like you said, the general, like if we try to think of Squid and the Whale sort of story arc, it is basically, it's mainly Walt, but also Frank. But if we're focusing on Walt, just like finding himself in this very difficult situation that he has to somehow escape, get out from under, and maybe choosing the wrong ways to do that before finally, gaining a little bit of I guess, more agency and a bit more independence in the end. In Lake Mungo, I guess Lake Mungo is tricky because it's hard to identify like one central protagonist. And it feels more like a character study of, like, as I mentioned, to me, it feels more like a character study of Alice. I guess, I mean, you could look at Squid and the Whale as a character study as well. But Walt does have this sort of, this trajectory or this thing that he goes through. So it's maybe less so. I don't know. I don't have much to say. What do you think?
Thinking about it in terms of the character study, so Lake Mungo, one of the sort of central driving things in the film is the family and her boyfriend and everyone just gradually learning more and more about their daughter. Gradually, things about her, like less savory things about her character, are kind of revealed over time, and they come to a greater awareness of who she was. And the kind of challenges that she was facing and how she was acting out and all that kind of thing, and maybe not idealizing her and understanding her more as a person over the course of the film. And I think Walt is kind of doing that with his dad as well. At the start, he's kind of seeing him, he's idolizing him, he's seeing him as this great intellectual that he should be emulating or whatever. And over the course of the film, he comes to sort of realize more about his dad, more about what his dad's actually like. The kinds of things that he was maybe, blanking out and ignoring. And he starts to realize that his dad is not quite the same person, but perhaps, seeing him as a person as opposed to, just a figure in his life. So something there, maybe?
Yeah, I like that. But when you're saying that, it also made me think of, sometimes the double bill works because the two films maybe like take different tacks on like a similar thing. So like you said, Alice, it's about the family slowly learning more about Alice, and by the end maybe they understand her a little bit better. And maybe in Squid and the Whale, it's almost the opposite. They thought they understood Walt, the parents. Well, they think they do, but maybe as the film goes on, we realize that they know less and less about him than they think. And even like they're trying to define who he is themselves, and he's kind of getting out from under that. So it's kind of going the opposite direction.
Yeah, well, there's that bit where after he's stolen the song and it's been found out, he tells his dad, and his dad's like, yeah, you'll have to go and do it just to keep him happy, but we all know it's not necessary. And it's like, not trying to help him at all, really. Having this very, almost like an idealized version of his son that couldn't do any wrong, that is just mini him.
Yes,
Part of his ego would be damaged by having his son have some kind of issue that needed to be dealt with.
Yes, yeah, I think so. Yeah, so I think he doesn't really know his son. Well, he can't know him because he's kind of covered his son with so much of himself. He's imposed all these layers. He's tried to, he manipulates him. He tells him what he should do in terms of like the girls that he's with, and there's an interesting in the hospital at the end. He says, I think when Walt starts crying, the father doesn't show any sympathy or anything. He just says, I think he says, you used to be pretty emotional when you were young. And so, again, just not understanding his son, like not recognizing that he's still an emotional person.
Yeah.
And I think Walt maybe killed Sophie. That's my theory. We don't see her after. So he spies on her in the Chinese restaurant. And I think he's stalking her and probably chopped her up later that evening and disposed of the body in the lake. But that's just, the clues are there if you look for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole family did it. They all took turns stabbing her. And that's why, even though they're a very dysfunctional family, but they're all being held together by this horrible secret that they share.
Yeah, these two films actually exist in the same cinematic universe, where if you're near a body of water, it inspires you to do horrible things.
Yes, the murder cinematic universe. No, I think these two actually work together surprisingly well as a double bill. I chose mine based on the fact that both of the films shared a body of water in the title or something water related in the title. But actually thematically, there's quite a lot connecting them.
I think dysfunctional families and how well the parents learning more or less about their kids.
Yeah, definitely.
We did it.
We did. Yeah. No, I was actually thinking when I was watching The Squid and the Whale, I was like, oh, this is great. This is like really easy another, connect.
Another family, that messed up family. So that's the end of our awkward double bill for this episode. Are you a fan of either of these films? Do you now feel tempted to check out the other one? Either way, we'd love to hear from you.
If you have any comments or suggestions for future films, please send them to awkwarddoublebills@gmail.com. You can also follow the show over on Blue Sky at adbpod.bluesky.social.